Hello, welcome. Today I'm going to be doing a video about whether or not you should build infrastructure first. There was one major change to infrastructure in the No Step Back DLC. It now benefits from state infrastructure when constructing infrastructure. Previously, that was not the case. Previously, that 1.8 times multiplier did not apply. With that change, the math on whether or not you should be building infrastructure before building civilian factories changes substantially. This is an Excel spreadsheet on the math for whether or not you should be building infrastructure or not. In the description, there will be a link to a Google Sheets document that you can download and use this for yourself if you'd like. The most important thing here is this bolded column on the right. This bolded column is how many factories you need to build to pay back the cost of building infrastructure from this level, so that'd be 4, to max level. As you can see, the less infrastructure you have, the better it is. I said the changes to infrastructure was incredibly important, and that's because previously, to go from level 8 to level 10, you would have needed to build about 10 civilian factories to pay back the cost. This math does not take into consideration the opportunity cost of building infrastructure first. Obviously, if you build civilian factories from the get-go, you're going to start getting more civilian factories sooner. I would say for most countries, round this up by 1 or 2. So round this up to 7 or 8. This math can also be adjusted. Up here we have the construction speed bonus for building civilian factories. This is for the Soviet Union to start the game. They start at export focus, which gives 10, and then the 5-year plan spirit gives them another 5%, and then they also get 10% for construction speed bonus. When these numbers are the same, the math is always the same. Doesn't matter if these numbers are negative 50, the math stays the same. This could be positive 50, it doesn't matter. This math is always the same unless these numbers are different. When they're dramatically different, like with the US, for example, at the start of the game, then it makes even more sense to build infrastructure first if you have massive bonuses to infrastructure and penalties to civs. So for a country like the US, for example, you start on undisturbed isolation, which gives you minus 50% construction speed and malice to your civilian factories. You will also, in November of 1936, get a 20% bonus to building infrastructure. So the way this math ends up working out is you have a 15% construction speed bonus to building infrastructure and a negative 35% construction speed bonus for civilian factories. So in any state where you're going to build more than 4 civilian factories, build infrastructure first, which basically just means as the US, you should basically be building infrastructure in every state that has resources. Most of these states by 1939 are going to have at least 3 or 4 open slots, or far more. And if you're going from level 2 infrastructure to level 5 infrastructure, you only need to build 3-4 factories. So this is what the US looks like when they have 1941 industry tech, dispersed or concentrated. There are tons of slots available in all of these interior regions, especially the ones that have resources. So you can build up the infrastructure to increase your resource count to allow you to stay on higher trade laws for longer, while also increasing the speed at which you're going to construct civilian factories. This also applies for countries that start on civilian economy. So like the UK. The UK starts with a minus 30% construction speed bonus to civilian factories. That means you're going to have a 30% bonus to constructing infrastructure over civilian factories. And when we input those numbers into the Excel table, we see we really only need to build 5 or 6 civilian factories in a state to make it worthwhile. Now, this math doesn't work as well for military factories. You need to build a lot of military factories to make it worthwhile. And it never makes sense to do it for refineries or for nuclear reactors unless you're going to build other things in those states as well. So maybe you're going to build a combination of refineries and civs in that state. That will pay itself back. You're going to have to build probably about 3 of each at least. In conclusion, because No Step Back now applies a construction speed bonus to building infrastructure from previous infrastructure levels, it now gets cheaper each time you want to build a new infrastructure level. This means it is far more viable to build infrastructure first, and you will get more infrastructure in the long run. This is the total amount of IC you need to spend to get to 10 factories. This is with level 1 infrastructure, just building 10 factories. This is building up to level 5 infrastructure first and then building 10 factories. As you can see, the effects at lower levels can be quite dramatic. So if you're trying to maximize your industry and you have a lot of available slots, then really consider building infrastructure first and then building your civilian factories.